Okay. So we're going to be talking about storytelling for the next 45 minutes. So let's just start off with a bit of definitions, and I will take it from two different perspectives. We'll start off first with the brand side. So Mark, quick definition on storytelling and what it means for you.
Okay, so can I confess at first I do have a problem with the word storytelling? Is that really going to make it controversial from the first second?
You like controversy.
So, okay. I think storytelling used in the context of data or in the context of brand advertising or in the context of novels or operas has certain hallmarks. So what I want to say about storytelling is that good stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I'm not sure all of the work that we produce for our clients has a good beginning, a middle, and an end, so I would challenge that. Good storytelling is all about enchantment. And, you know, from a child, you learn stories. That's how you learn the world. And that part of that is the magic that first comes with hearing stories and understanding the internal logic of stories and the rhythms and cadences and allusions. So, in fact, as I think Tolstoy said, you know, stories, happiness is about allegories, unhappiness is stories. So that's another thing I would challenge storytelling on. Usually when we're telling a story about a brand, it's always about happiness in the end. Everything works out. Strange that, isn't it? But very rarely do we ever tell stories about unhappiness unless it's about a competitor brand. So I'm not sure that criterion of storytelling works. Stories have heroes and villains. And you know, and often we're making the brand the hero. Rarely are we creating any villains. So again, that sort of central tension that you find in stories is quite difficult. So what I'm going to say, and also most stories are false. We've made them up. Now, those are pretty obvious things to say about storytelling, but I wanted to be radical at the beginning to challenge our legitimizing use of the word storytelling, and sort of say, are we just using this word to dress up what we do, to give it a bit more allure and glamour? I don't know. I'm going to throw that over.
So Rasha, for a media agency, is it less of a happy ending? Or how do you define storytelling?
As a media agency, I think we have a big part in contributing the channels or the, let's say, pit stops of a story. Because without a media agency, and I would kind of also try to confuse the audience here a bit, the new age of a media agency has been defined. We no longer fill media spaces, we actually create media spaces. And without the media agency, there could not be a story. Because if you want to talk to your consumer, you start with them in a specific media channel. Unfortunately, they say TV is the first screen, but it's not. It starts on mobile, and then it goes into, let's say, TV. And then even on mobile, you come back and you talk to them with another story. If you're plugging in technology and you know what they're watching on TV, let's say. So as a media agency, storytelling is how do we identify different touch points, or how do we use dynamic touch points to know where the consumer is, what they're consuming, what type of media, different context and content, and then we push the best content to them. So from a brand perspective, brands really know what type of tone and sometimes content. But as a media agency, we're working really hard as a media agency, and I believe other media agencies currently, to specialize in content, specialize in tech, and also data. So if you combine them together, content, context, which is a channel, and then connectivity also, which is a type of data, what type of data you get the best story. And without these elements, I don't think any brand or client can actually tell a story without these.
So Mayank, if we're talking about data-driven storytelling using these insights, can you, one, define these insights, and two, how are we using them for brand storytelling?
Well, I think the first thing we want to do is, and I'm going to use my position in the middle here between brand and media to my full advantage, is that we don't think of it as data-driven. We think of it as data-informed. And I know I'm using certain specific lexicon, but there's a difference between the two. I think over-dependence on data is a problem. It's not something that we want to get into, and I think brand agencies would agree. And so would media agencies, because we get into this space and we're overly dependent on data. But it shouldn't be that we discard it completely and we walk into the room and we go, okay, this is the planning insight, right? It's not, right? There has to be real insight. There has to be real value that we've uncovered, discovered, put into specific metrics, given it some kind of value, and then defined reach, people, what we're going to do off the back of it. So from that point of view, it's about shifting into that space. And I think one of my favorite examples on that front is, and it's a story I read a long time ago, was for House of Cards. Everyone here seen House of Cards? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So I'm giving out spoilers now, okay? So season 1, pilot episode, he kills the dog, right? When the writers wrote it, he killed the dog. When they did focus group testing, that was the lowest moment. They said to the writers, listen, take it out, don't kill the dog, let it live, bring some value into it, make people feel good. And the writers said, no way. All the data was saying, no, kill the dog, don't kill the dog, don't kill the dog. The writers stuck with it. Why? Because it's the tangent. It's what happens afterwards. It set up the tone for the entire season. It set up the tone for who he is as a person. And that's what's important as well. So sometimes we need to be informed by data and not just take it for what it is. And we do that all the time, right? So many different metrics telling us, do this. And we go, okay, that direction, move the logo to the right, change the colors, put it in this context and colors. That's the way to do it from there. No, I think that's where, I'm sorry, I'm changing the topic of your discussion today. So we're moving from data-driven to data-informed storytelling.
So, okay, Rasha, this data-informed storytelling, is it happening in the agencies today?
What type of agencies? I don't want to go all
Media.
feisty here.
Let's go media for now.
Within media agencies, it's actually happening because we have looked at digital footprints in terms of data. Because again, if I had a penny every time I heard the word data, I wouldn't be even here. I would be in Jamaica or whatever. But we speak about data every day. But what type of data? As a media agency, we look at digital footprint in terms of what consumers are doing. We try to cluster them. And then now, moving forward this year, to be quite honest, we're trying to create customized, automated, dynamic content per cluster. But more importantly, as a media agency, we also look at, and this is what I'm trying to do every day, is look at new waves or new streams of data. For instance, proximity data. If we understand that a woman, let's say, named Farah, is walking around in Carrefour, and she's walking around the barbecue aisle, we understand through proximity marketing and data that maybe she's up for a barbecue on this weekend. So as Coke, we would programmatically target her because we're reading the data, and we're customizing content that says, taste the feeling with Coke this weekend on your barbecue with 15, let's say, second videos that are customized for her. So yes, we're informed about what the consumer is doing, but as a media agency, we're trying to create not a story, but snackable pieces of content that relate to the consumer. Instead of taking a TVC that the brand agency, with all due respect, they come in, they throw in a 30-second TVC. It's beautiful. It's for TV, most probably. But the client comes and says, and it's not the brand agency's fault, I want to put it as YouTube, as a pre-roll, hoping for a high VTR, and stuff like that. Hopefully pre-rolls soon will be out. And we struggle to get the engagement really high. And then the media agency is blamed. But the media agency shouldn't be blamed. So as a media agency, we need to look at what kind of data can manipulate the content and customize the content other than the existing brand content. And yeah, that's it.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely reasonable. And I think you might have solved my problem on storytelling as well, because first off on that one, because I was complaining that I didn't think storytelling was the right expression. But the way you were describing the different customer touch points and the potential journey they can go through to eventually purchase, then maybe what we can begin to do is think about the different media channels, all the different touch points, being different, the beginning, the middle, and the end. And I think maybe that then gives us a story arc in terms of the media recommendation. And then the question will be, are we putting the right content in each part of the story arc? absolutely agree that one of the fallacies of modern marketing is, I've just spent $150,000 on a TV commercial. I must get value out of it absolutely everywhere. Milk it, exactly. Now, the point is that TV commercial actually has had loads of data go into it. The days of somebody sitting in an ivory tower just, can I say this, farting great ideas, has not, that's over. It's gone, long gone. What happens now is, as you will know, everything is researched, almost everything is link tested. The kind of richness of data that goes into the initial insights, that goes into the audiences are, they're huge. So that little module of the TV commercial, by the time it is a TV commercial, is fit for purpose as a TV commercial. It's already been so processed that actually then the question arises, when you started off thinking about the TV commercial, what else were you thinking? And I think that's where this is where the problem is, that none of us are at that table at the beginning sitting down and saying, okay, let's work on the same map. We've each got different maps. Yeah?
Okay, so Mark, keep the mic there. A big part, obviously, of insights for curating content is to try and build emotion with your consumers.
Yeah.
Do you believe that digital content today is building an emotional connection with consumers for brands?
There is no reason why it shouldn't, and there are great examples of how it has. I think I suppose TV is seen as an emotional medium because sometimes, not so much these days, it can make you cry, but then so can a well-crafted piece of direct mail about a charity. There are all kinds, so I don't think TV can claim absolute responsibility for that. But I'm always guided by, there's Maya Angelou, who's, I think, is a fantastic writer, but she said something like, people don't remember you for what you say, they don't remember you for what you do, people remember you for how you make them feel. And I think every medium has that capacity. Now, the question is, in digital media, you've got a more targeting opportunity. Again, the difference there is whether targeting always equals relevance. And I think that's something we might want to pick up later on because if it's not relevant, then your chances of touching somebody and emotively kind of getting them is much less. But I think that quite often the emotional starting place for a lot of brand communication is data. It really is. I mean, where else are you going to get the kind of insights that are going to drive a differentiated communication? For example, there was one I was working on this week, and we discovered that in the region, only 4% of teenage girls rely on their mother for advice about health because of the strength of social media networks and influencers and everything else. Astonishing. What an insight. But of course, it's a great data-based insight on which to begin to build a strong communication. That kind of flash of knowledge is inspirational. It's a good place to begin to start.
So Mayank, with all these feelings, presuming we've got the right audience, the right people, and we're trying to resonate with them, is this emotional content driving results in terms of the bottom line for clients?
I think it is. I think it's contributing. It is contributing. And I think the reason for saying that is because we've done constructive and conclusive tests towards that end. We've done single source tests on media, trying to rule out TV at times. We've gone dark for some very big FMCGs for an entire month on TV. I know I'm saying this in the surety tent, but we've done that, and our sales didn't decline. They continued to rise. They were not affected in any other way. But there are so many other contributing factors towards why a consumer buys what he buys or she buys. And so we're a part of this massive map, as you put it, which has storytelling, it has context, it has relevance. It's all about making sure that we're speaking to them at the moment of truth. Sorry, that's a buzzword. We won't say that again. And it's really about, from that point of view, it is driving sales. Of course, digital has many more direct ways of measuring it. We have, and this is not on-ground purchases yet, but even in the on-ground world, with the likes of beacon technology in terms of obviously proximity, it's coming into play. We are seeing great effects into it. We've got a huge kind of e-commerce. I mean, 2017 is going to see a big, massive influx of e-commerce into our market, obviously with the likes of new players launching in this space. So we've got digital mediums to actually explain that sales do happen. I think it's tougher for certain brands to measure it. And when I say tougher, and they're the ones who usually tell the most number of stories, right? And those are FMCG brands, right? FMCG brands tend to say the most number of stories, yet they are operating in a space where they're not the seller. So they're not the distributor as well, and in many cases. They're just getting their product shipped out and getting it put on the shelf, and then we're hoping that all of the things that we do will contribute towards that person picking it up. And we've done econometrics data modeling, and we've gone into media mix modeling on that front for many clients. And sometimes the numbers are shocking. Media can account for roughly 30 to 40% at best. Okay, sometimes it can be as low as 10%. So I think, so to go back to the answer, yes, it does. It does contribute. And in the same way, to go back to relevance and finding the relevant consumers, and to sort of bow into Rasha on this front, is as we're finding these sort of programmatic clusters and we're defining our audiences and finding very, very relevant touch points for them, TV doesn't find relevance. TV is going out to each and every one. We're looking at a time slot where we know a lot of people are watching television for a specific type of show, and we're bombarding them with something else. We may be doing The Voice, I'm sorry, and we may be showing them a car ad right in between that space, unless you're going to be singing in your car, or you're doing karaoke, which is becoming big in the US at the moment, in your car. Yes, maybe that's the kind of relevant, and that could be the content that you create with it. But it's also about finding those right spots, those sweet spots, and going after it. Another buzzword, sorry.
Okay, Rasha, let's just move back a little bit towards storytelling.
Can I stay where he is right now?
Oh, okay, go for it.
While you were talking, your buzzwords are amazing, but 3 things that you said: media mix and econometrics. And then you said driving sentiment, or maybe, does it associate with emotions? And then at the end, you said sweet spot. So can I have just a minute on that? I'm not kind of trying to promote what we do, but as we come from the same, I think, media agency, you head up content, we head up content too. And what we've done the past year is that we've planted econometrics and media mix to understand, the econometrics of a media mix. And we've realized that digital video for a specific client, it was Coca-Cola, for the past 2014-15, and by the mid of 2016, that digital video raised brand love by 2-3 points. So it wasn't TV, it was digital video. And then based on that, we were able to assess that, okay, digital video does kind of raise or enhance or kind of contribute to emotions. So we looked at a technology, and we started thinking about a technology that reads and tracks, not sentiment. This is, old news, 2001, 2002 even, with all these social tracking and social listening. But we looked at building a tool using IBM Watson that reads and tracks emotions. And based on that, we were able to define and map out for multiple clients moving forward what are the sweet spots that we can tackle in terms of emotion. So we knew what people were feeling at a specific time during the day based on kind of keywords and an algorithm that we created. And this is where innovation comes into play, into creating technology and creating algorithms to be able to look at different streams of data to be able to create content. And based on TV, yes, consumers are bombarded on TV with ads. But if you have a technology, or if you have something novelty with a partner or a publisher or within the phone that understands what people are watching, what time of the day, and you can create for them content or an experience, not necessarily a video, because content is more than video. kind of piece of engagement that they can feel that it's for them and feel that it's for also someone else. So let's say here you're watching Chelsea and Real Madrid, okay? And your phone is with you, and a piece of technology tells you that, okay, also, let's say Rabia and Brendan are watching Chelsea and Real Madrid. And it says that they're watching the match too. So your experience on TV is then customized, their experience on TV is then there's a story created for you on your mobile that you could connect with someone else. And this is where emotions are heightened. Sorry, I took time.
Thank you. You can keep it.
Oh.
Yeah. I want to touch off the idea of creative storytelling and the ecosystem. So we have media agencies, brand agencies, we have social media agencies, we have creative agencies, and a lot in between. Who does or who should do what?
Everyone should do everything.
How is that possible?
Well, everyone claims to do everything, I'm sorry. Brand agencies, we sit together, we work with multiple brand agencies, sister agencies, competing agencies, and everyone wants the big piece of the pie. But at the end of the day, it's one pie, you know. We need to work together and tell them what kind of data do we have that might help them. And sometimes they come and just and tell us, okay, we have this brilliant idea, although the data tells us that, no, this is not where you should go. Yes, with the House of Cards example, but this is not the way you should go the other way. And then again, back to my point, the content is created, is then pushed, and then the metrics are not relevant. But also, within a media agency now, the new media agencies and the big guys, you have social specialization. Like at we have Society, it's around 20 people. We have Studios, big content department. We have Labs, where we have ambassadors on innovation. They're called lab engineers. I call them lab rats. But they're in every team. So we try to create a kind of a story from creating the data or finding the data to identifying which media touch points and then creating. Sometimes it's the other way around. We see what's the best media touch point. It could be an in-mall muppy that we create the content there that engages, and then we grab that, engagement and that content, and then we push it on social. So Hello Happiness, for instance, the Hello Happiness machine by Coke, it was an innovative activation that then took part in creating a story online. And brand agencies are doing this successfully, some brand agencies. They're looking at data, but they're looking at, the shell from the outside, some social listening, a bit of insight. Like the insight that he gave is pretty brilliant, 30%. And we have a lot of FMCGs, and specifically mothers are the big target. So we try to look for data that's more granular instead of, one big generic piece of data.
Okay, so Mark, if we're all gathering different pieces of information, brand agencies, through social media agencies, and we're all trying to tell a brand story, is there a good chance that this story is going to be very fragmented or very different or a different tone across each of these agencies' work?
Well, that's a leading question, because right now it's not just, assuming that taking the pie metaphor, it's not just the brand agencies and the media agencies with their eyes on the pie. There are production companies. In London's full of production companies and now have creative departments, have planners, are beginning to shape up quite aggressively against the very agencies for whom they're providing productions. Management consultancies, can I add them? Because they're potentially a very powerful voice at that brand strategy table. So, for example, certainly in Northern Europe, Accenture's Offspring Field, designed as a brochure agency, is getting into a lot of very valuable discussions around where brands should be going. They've gone beyond producing just PowerPoint and actually now getting into some content. Management consultancies are there too. So, of course, I long for the days when the main fulcrum of decision-making about where a brand should go was with a bunch of people who are experts in media and creative working together with the same bottom line. And I think this is part of the issue, that the contract we made with the devil when media split off is that you've got financially competing interests, all trying to offer the same advice to the client. Now, there are ways to get around this, I think. None of them are perfect. The first thing is for all the key stakeholders to be in the room at the beginning, be in the strategy room. So brand agency, media agency, social media probably, and the client. Exactly. And so that you're all given the same instruction set and told to play nicely. Then the next part of it, I think, so that's a kind of strategic point. The next part is a process point. I think we have to find ways of making the work together. And I think this is as much a part of, some clients incentivize it. I've worked with some more progressive clients who will actually make part of the agency remuneration how well you play with the other agencies. One I was working with last year, that was 30% of the actual remuneration. So it really begins to hurt if you're not actually doing what you should be doing.
Your background is journalism, right?
Yeah,
originally. And I feel like you forgot someone in this conversation, which is the publisher.
Yeah, could be, yeah.
The publisher sits on a lot of information, right?
Oh, big mistake. Yeah, okay.
The publisher sits on a lot of data,
Yeah.
right? What kind of content is being consumed, touch points of your consumers. There's a lot of information there, but how can the publisher get involved in this conversation, or how can they help?
Well, I think actually, yes, you're right. And again, there's a potential, as one might see on paper, a tension between the brand agency and the media agency. There's a potential tension there I can see as well. About 2 years ago, I was working for, I did an assignment for Hearst magazines in the UK. And at that point, they had woken up to the fact that print was challenged on every side and were looking at creative solutions to drive conversations directly with clients. These were fantastic conversations, really, not only because in a publishing company, you have people who can actually write more than a paragraph, but you've also got some fantastic art directors, and designers. But most of all, you've got a brand, effectively, a publishing brand, that really knows its audience. In fact, the audience is more likely, I think, in certain instances, to identify with the publishing brand than it is to identify with any of the brands that are within the publication. An example for Hearst we found was Cosmopolitan. There is something about Cosmo which just there's a kind of reader base there which is very, very loyal. They're not necessarily there for that long, but they get what Cosmo's doing. And I remember one exercise we did with Clinique. It was the first time Cosmo used Google Hangouts, and they just every morning in January, they created a Detox January. Every morning in January, they had the Cosmo editor, a Clinique expert, skincare expert, and a couple of other journalists from Cosmo, just sitting down there taking inquiries, sitting on a sofa in the basement of Cosmopolitan. And that month, Clinique's sales went from being 5th in Boots, the largest retailer of such things in the UK, to 3rd. Massive improvement. No change in it was as scientific as you can get. They were just doing the same level of advertising, but this just banged up everything because the publisher was directly involved in the discussion with the conversation with consumers. So I think it's very relevant for publishers to be brought in at the right times. And you might also argue that content creators for the TV stations as well.
Sorry, I've heard two viewpoints, and I want to add to that. So the first one is in terms of everyone working together. This is something we're trying at the moment, and I'm going to use the word trying because it is a trial. I think the big thing on that front for us is creative agencies or brand agencies. They get the idea. They get what they want to say. They get the story. And I think my biggest pet peeve with them at the end of the day is they forget where it's going to be executed. They get TV. They may get print. They may get outdoor. They get big messaging. They get how the story is going to come across. And I'm sorry, but it's just there are so many other touch points that we're working towards that message is then adapted It's not created for, it's not made for it, it is adapted. So we will take, and anyone who's worked in an agency here knows how you take AI files and strip them down, right? It's basically that. That's the first thing. And I think I agree. If we all come to the room together in the beginning, that's a great way for us to solve that, where we can tell you all the touch points we want to get into, all the conversations we want to have on behalf of the brand, and then you can start working backwards from there. The second thing is in terms of getting the publisher in the room. We're getting into a place where we're working with many publishers, and obviously with the likes of programmatic coming into play, a big part of the game. I think one of our clients is almost 80% programmatic this year, which is massive. On that front, when you get into that kind of space, yes, having publishers in the room is important, but which publisher in the room? Which publisher gets invited to that meeting? Which publisher becomes a part of that conversation? And then the last thing on that front is, how many publishers are not self-serving? Because agencies act on behalf of the brand, publishers act on behalf of the publisher. And I think and that's where a lot of times when we see, the values of the solutions that come back to us, they serve the interests of the publishers more than they serve the interests of our brand, and the brands feel like they're just being inserted and or force-fed into that situation. So and I think that's homework for us. I know you guys at DMS are doing a great job, by the way. Thank you for having me, all right? That was the last plug. I just had him. So yeah, this is the last time Rabia invites me for anything after this. But no, so with DMS, it's been a great journey because we've got Lena, we've got you, we've got Rabia, we've got all these interesting conversations where you become stakeholders not for individual publications, but you become a stakeholder and you join a meeting to give us a broad solution in terms of what can work. Where should we be?
This is what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Rasha, is data killing creativity, rather?
That I think he'd love to answer that, Mark.
He'll get his chance.
Yeah, I know, but I wanna try to kill it before it gets to him. Yes and no. It kills creativity because at the end of the day, because we have creatives at UM, and it always starts off with we have Rodrigo, and Rodrigo was like, what if we can do this? Imagine we can do this, but we're like, no, Rod, the data doesn't say this, What if? So it kills the what if we can do that. And I think the what if is what gets us up in the morning and makes us love what we do, which is being creative. But at the end of the day, the client comes and says, okay, give me a big idea that's crazy. I'm happy you're here. Biggest idea that it's crazy and let's go with it. And then the client comes and says, but give me, rationalize it with data, and it's just is it the egg or the chicken? But again, data is very important to create stories. And so I wouldn't know either the chicken or the egg. But in order to create a story, you need to have, because storytelling is an always-on approach. If you want to be an always-on brand, talking always to your consumer, or a media agency that preaches always on, you need storytelling. And in order for you to have storytelling, you need to have an always-on approach to data. So either or, storytelling does not work without data. And should I give it to Mark?
We need to think like lawyers. So
Yeah.
I said to a team recently, we need to look at the stats and pick out the ones that are relevant to our story.
Totally.
And bin the rest. Over to Mark.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid I'm going to agree with a large part of that. I think the idea of the chicken and the egg is interesting because it's very hard to separate creative data finding or data selection in the case of the lawyers from creative invention. And this, I think, is a deep cultural issue we all have. This idea that it's a left-hand brain, right-hand brain thing. This theory that, that yes, different parts of the brain do operate different functions. But great people in our business tend to be good at both sides of the brain, don't you find? I mean, they tend to be good at analyzing and they tend to be good at making connections that haven't been made before. And I think this is one of those relics of the early part of the 20th century, where we were all divided into scientists and at school, were you made to focus more on science because you had a mathematical brain, and made to go to art lessons because you were quite good at painting, but then you weren't allowed to do science. This is all nonsense, because you think of somebody like Leonardo da Vinci, who was a genius because both sides of the brain were working perfectly. Nobel Prize winners, just go through Miroslav Holub, the top immunologist in the world, a Nobel Prize winner in immunology, is one of the world's best poets. These people think with both sides of the brain. And I think that's what we do. I think great media people do that. They leap to conclusions that are informed by data, but aren't slaves to data. And I think that's a really important difference.
Okay, I'm going to round this up with one last question, and then we're going to maybe put it out to the audience who have any questions for the panel. So finally, just looking at artificial intelligence and the impact on the creative mind. Are we going to be replaced by machines? Mark?
Oh dear. Wasn't it this week, Coke decided to bring in an artificial intelligence creative director, which might explain why their strapline is the same as Cadbury's. But sorry, I had to say that. But this is yes, of course. And we've been working with Watson recently on a project, and it was very, very useful and provided fantastic background. But there is something in the waywardness of individuals and the fact that creativity is something which I think we all have, and we're all able to exploit to a different degree. The idea that we could get from here to robots that come up with great ad campaigns at the moment is science fiction. Daniel Dennett, the philosopher, the US philosopher, was interviewed last week and estimated that, and he's been working on Watson, estimated that it would require an investment 100 times greater than Watson to get anywhere close to the levels of ingenuity that the human mind's capable of producing. So, in theory, I guess, once the amount of data interactions resemble the number going on in the average human brain, then at some point a robot will be able to come up with stories that enchant and have a beginning, a middle, and an end. But that may not be now.
I think the first step, it's not happening right now. So that's it. We're not there yet. Will we get there? I doubt it. I think it would have to come out of Britain, and it needs to get its sarcasm right? So that's the only way. I mean, it needs to do dark humor. I mean, the day AI can do dark humor will be the day, right? So we have to get to that place. The other thing with it is going back to just taking data and making informed decisions about it, and also local nuances. We tend to, it's amazing because a lot of people here tend to have things like MENA, ME in their titles, which means that we're representing 9 different countries, 10 different countries, all with their individual facets. Okay, the day we can get to a position or a space where we can actually link into and have AI that understands actual local on-ground nuances of how people behave, how a Lebanese is different from a Jordanian and how they think differently on a weekend, and why a Lebanese will always go and buy Sakur or Ralph Lauren. It's things like that, right? So the day AI can do that will be an interesting day. But it's about making that, and those are things that I don't think we're there yet, not there, and it'll take a long time for that to happen. And it'll need to, and I mean, the bot will need to say Shuyani, right? Yeah.
We're there, but not to the fullest. Because if you want to use AI for storytelling, it's kind of an undefined area. But if you want to use AI, and this is a word we're hearing about in the predictions for 2017, there's no such thing. Although you've seen title of predictions 2017, some of them are mine. But chatbots. We've heard this word hundreds of times since, last year. And we have experimented in chatbots last year. And we're rolling out a few experiments right now on chatbots. So how do you plug in chatbot? With the update of Messenger, now chatbots are even more dynamic and they're able to create conversations. So with a conversation, you can create a story, right? So chatbots are able, with the use of artificial intelligence, Emirates MBD launched early this year Eva, their chatbot, their AI assistant, and that's a bank. I'm not saying that she's going to push a piece of content telling them what to do tonight on your night out, but what I'm saying is she can create a conversation with you based on whatever you have, and that's a bank. That's actually pretty easy. But also, a mall in America launched a chatbot who is a shopping assistant. So going back, based on your e-commerce behavior, what you've bought, what you like, your digital footprint, and can recommend to you. I would love to talk to a chatbot all day. Sometimes people can be annoying. But the thing is that, like Mark was saying, we're far-fetched from, a robot or AI replacing a human being. I don't know, anyone here watches Suits? Raise your hand. Okay, have you watched the few last episodes? Donna, the Donna?
Spoiler.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so watch the episode and remember me. And you will now then realize that artificial intelligence, it's not, I know Suits can be too fluffy, but we always look at what if. We wake up with what if. So creating a piece of, smart assistant like Alexa and all of these, if you humanize her or humanize it and plug in emotions into it, anything is possible. The Donna.
Okay, thanks, guys. It was a great conversation. Let's just push this out to the audience and see if any of you guys have questions for the panel. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.